Welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast, where we speak about all things related to spirituality, soul level healing, intuitive guidance, frequencies, and much more. I'm Amy Sikarskie, licensed vocational nurse, past life hypnotherapist, master intuitive energy healer, and a clairvoyant physical channel. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Spirit School Online, where we offer courses in energy therapy, free guided meditations, courses and information around learning to connect in with your spirit guides, and much more. You can find me at amysikarskie.com and offerings at spiritschoolonline.com. Hi everyone, welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Show. I'm Amy Sikarskie, and I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Lisa Campion. Lisa is an amazing healer, psychic, and author. I've just about finished your Art of Psychic Reiki book, Lisa, and I'm so excited to have you on and just talk about all things, all the things that come up in our world of healing and intuition. So welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. And I was reading your book and I was really grateful for it. I was just feeling, wow, if I had had this when I started, right?
Yeah.
That would have been nice. I'm so grateful that you wrote this book. I was just telling my friends, I was like, I think I'm going to put this and highlight it for all my Reiki students too, because it's really invaluable. And I had to piece together things in my own path. So I started with Reiki training in 2001. And then just like your book shows, all the psychic intuition, all the hits came through, all of the clairs activated. And I'd love for you to share your journey with it. Did you start out with psychic impressions, or was it more in the energy world?
I have a pretty strange journey here. So I started working as a psychic when I was 19, and that was back in the 80s. So, I mean, it was such a weird thing to do back then. And, I don't know. I was one of those really, really psychic children. So I was like born with my psychic gifts sort of wide open. And I spent a lot of my time in my childhood trying to figure out what's going on, because back then there was like no information. There were no books in the library, no teachers, psychic teachers, no psychics on TV, no internet, no podcasts like this. It was like a information wasteland. So I was just trying to figure out what was going on and pretend to be normal in public. I was like, that was it. But I was, I could see things, hear things. I just knew things. I was an empath. I could feel everything. And, my parents, God bless my hippie parents, like they didn't drag me to the church and throw holy water on me, but they were like, oh, you have such a great imagination, So I was like, am I imagining this? I was trying to figure it all out. And so I started working, and then I went to college. It was in the 80s, and it was the dawn of the new age. Thank God. And all of a sudden there was like teachers and new age bookstores and psychic teachers. So I kind of got my first real mentor then, and I started working, seeing clients, and I really quickly learned that I didn't have enough skills. Like I didn't know what to do. I was only 19. And then there was this moment when like somebody cried in a session. I was like, I don't know what to do. So I went back to school and became a therapist. And for a lot, which was a good move. For a long time, I combined therapy and psychic readings together. And then in 1999, I learned Reiki, and I added Reiki to the mix, and back then, like Reiki was still pretty fringe. Like it was still a pretty weird thing to do. Like, so I'm just continuing my streak of doing weird things. And, I was teaching psychic development, I was teaching Reiki, and, I was teaching psychic development classes, and I was teaching Reiki classes. And I just noticed that my students would do it all. Like they would take Reiki, and then they would take the psychic classes, because like we talked about, like you said, it tends to pop you open. And then I decided to write the book. I wrote the book because really talented Reiki practitioner came up to me and she said, I quit doing Reiki because it popped my psychic open so much. I was seeing like dead people walk through my room. I didn't know what to do. I was really freaked out. I was really scared. She went to her Reiki teacher, and her Reiki teacher basically told her to knock it off. She's like, stop that right now. And she didn't have anything to say. It's not part of the normal Reiki training. It's not back then, especially.
Yeah.
Reiki teachers were like, well, they didn't know what to do either, right? So she quit Reiki, and that made me really sad. So I was like, oh, to me, they just go together so well. They're so helpful if you're a Reiki practitioner to develop your intuition and your psychic ability and mush it in with your client, for your clients. It just serves our clients so much better. So that's when I wrote the book.
Oh, I love it. I'm so grateful
Yeah.
that you did. Yeah, you're just everything in there I could relate to, and everything you just shared. I'm just feeling, oh my gosh. So I trained in 2001, and it was with the manual from William Leland, which
Yep.
probably, yeah, you're familiar with.
Yep.
And like you said, it was just like very practical. There wasn't much around any of the intuitive gifts. So it was just, step by step hand placement. This is the mechanics of how the energy comes in. And so when I started in the sessions having messages, at first I was like, oh my gosh, is this happening? Do I say something? What's going on? But for myself, I had a client who I guess he thought I did readings. And mind you, I had nowhere did I list this. So on the Reiki table, he started asking me questions, and they were about, it ended up being about a past life. And he had
Mm.
already had an experience, which I don't know this gentleman and I don't know what's going on. So he had an experience on his own, and he was asking for like info on the missing pieces to his own visions, and it all synced up. And so then I thought, wow, all righty. We need to go and, like
Mm.
you said, take some classes. So I did the angel communication classes, oracle cards, psychic development, all of it. And your book really does a beautiful job of combining it in one like amazing package. So have you had, I'm sure you have, but do you have any stories, or how have you had the response from your students like come through when you've combined both psychic understandings with, like, the whole traditional part of the symbols and the hand placements? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think that it's a big relief for people, because, and it was very radical. So I published that book in 2018,
Mm.
and it caused a bit of a splash. Like people were mad. People were mad, first of all, because I published the symbols in there, and some people still get mad about that.
Yeah.
And people were like, this isn't Reiki, like that, that somehow seems to be kind of a split in the, Reiki community
Yeah.
around, well, is it a good thing to allow in intuition and psychic, or do we not, or do we kind of like cut that out? And I still sometimes find that division.
Yeah.
So I think that the client I was talking about, the story that goes with that is that she felt a real powerful calling to do hospice work, which I think is so beautiful. And so I'm always so impressed
Mhm.
and grateful when people do things like that to bring Reiki to the really tough things. And hospice is one of them. And she's a fantastic healer. And she told me that she was getting a lot of, because she was working in a hospital. It's full of dead, hospitals are full of ghosts.
Yep.
So she was like, I don't know how to handle that. And she was also feeling like um, the strain, the empathic strain, because she's an empath. So many Reiki practitioners are. And so she had sort of the twin challenges of how does she manage her sensitivity as an empath in a hospice environment, and how did she handle the psychic stuff. And I really wrote the book for her. Like
Ah,
it was almost like I directly wrote it for her. And it just turns out that a lot of other people were also struggling with that. So when I teach Reiki level, I teach my own version of Reiki that I call psychic Reiki. And in my level 1 classes, I teach energy management practices that really help us as we become more sensitive, as we're, if you're an empath, or how do we not absorb the energy that we're, around when we're doing Reiki sessions. And then in Reiki level 2, I teach more of the connection with the guides. Like, how do we work with Reiki guides? How do we bring psychic information into our sessions in a way our clients want, which is, it's so interesting that your client asked you for psychic information. I think more and more that happens. People want both. Our clients really want both. So I feel like it's a tremendous gift to the client. And if we can offer both, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So I was definitely feeling the need to bring in the psychic information and let my students know that the way that I offer sessions is not the typical how I was originally taught, because a lot of people that work with me have had a session and then they'll take the class, and I teach with William Lee Rand, and then I'll have additional classes sprinkled in, so it's like the very basic formality, the way I was taught. And then we add in the intuition aspect. So when they go to have a session, well, two things. When I have clients that say, "Oh, I really enjoyed the session. I'm going to look for another Reiki practitioner close by because I do remote work." And I'll just say, "That's perfect. But please know, not everybody does it the way I do. Not everybody will add the reading part to it. And if you find somebody like that and you resonate with them, that's amazing." And then additionally, when I have students, I'll say, "Don't feel like you have to start with all of the reading part and explaining all the information. It's baby steps, and you just flow and you trust as the information comes on." And so all of your practical advice for managing energy, discerning spirit, I love that at the end of the book, because that's the chapter I'm on right now. I was like, yes, this is fantastic, is really valuable and important. And so like I'm just so grateful and I'm so happy. I know we just met, but I just have to tell you, like, I'm so grateful you wrote the book, and that I'm sure your own journey, maybe we can talk about some experiences, but having the backlash come to you, that I'm just grateful that you wrote the book. So I have to say that, and I'm hoping it wasn't too horrible, because I understand when I wanted more information, and I'd already taken the Reiki classes. This was back in 2000s. And I would look online, and there would be some blogs that had the symbols out, and people were really upset. And I thought, well, you know what? If you don't have the attunement, then does it matter? If people are looking and thirsty for knowledge, and they're truly a healer looking to better themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And I have such a Reiki mutt, my lineage. I'm such a Reiki mutt because I studied with so many different teachers over the years, and one of my teachers studied with Diane Stein, who's also really radical in a lot of ways, especially back then when she was new. And she published the symbols in her book, Essential Reiki, which is a classic Reiki book. If you've never read it, everyone should read that one. But her point on that was that, a lot of times the traditional way Reiki was taught was sort of an oral tradition, so the symbols weren't written down, or you weren't supposed to show them or share them. And that there's just like a lot of mistakes or changes that happen, especially in the really complex symbols that have, many, many strokes in them. They're Japanese characters. Hanchize Shonen has like 22 strokes in it, 20 or 22, depending on which version you learn. And so I felt there was some merit in standardizing them, so that everyone's on the same page. And that's why I also chose to publish them as sort of in the Diane Stein school of Reiki training that way. And I didn't have, there was some backlash about that. There was a lot of like, how dare you mix it with Reiki? It was a challenge for me to, in a way, publish a book that had the word psychic in the title.
Yeah.
Because even though I'd been like working as a psychic literally my whole entire life, and I've been pretty out of this, out of the closet, the Reiki closet and the psychic closet with it. I was still like, ooh, what's going to happen if I publish a book with the word psychic in the title? And I did get some you're an agent of Satan kind of
Oh,
response. But I don't know, I just kind of ignore it and carry on, because I do feel like it helps more people than it freaks out.
yeah,
And
definitely. I'm grateful that you did, and that if you had any challenging times with the feedback, I know it's later on in life, but if I could go back in time, maybe you would have felt me just like saying thank you so much for
oh,
it.
thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the psychic abilities come on too, but I was raised in a very religious household. And so that word was completely taboo. And so I'm like, okay, how do we get around it? As I started, okay, intuition, talking to
Mhm.
angels and spirit guides, like that's okay. And I can do mediumship, but it's not my favorite. There's a whole other conversation around that. So I said, well, I'm not a medium. And I don't really want to call myself a psychic right now. So it was, yeah, I do Reiki and I do angel readings. But nowadays, what I found is people are really grasping, like when they look, when in search engines, when they're looking for the work that we do, it is psychic. Like, tell me how to
Yeah.
find somebody that can connect with higher inspiration, deeper soul wisdom, and really bring that information through. And I just know I look back at my own healing space, and that's how I got into this line of work, is because I was going through a healing crisis. I think that's how most of us
Yeah.
find ourselves here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, how do I Google psychic? I don't know. But I did, right? And then today I feel like it has a more, if I Google it, I feel like there's more of a welcoming energy to me around that word. So also it just feels like you kind of broke through the barriers with the title
Yeah.
of your book and opened it up.
Mm. Yeah, it was really intentional to kind of really claim it, to reclaim it. And like when I was growing up, like psychic was sort of like the psychic hotline. Like you call, it was like some 800 number you called. So there's kind of the connotation with like scammers and I don't know, like charlatans. There's a little bit of that, and the devil for sure. Um, and and yet, I mean, like when I started working, like there was always a small amount of people that just knew that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
That's what they were looking for. And I feel like in our more modern time here, like we have psychics on TV, we have like really famous psychics, celebrity psychics, and psychics of the celebrities. It's paranormal TV shows. It's such a wider, there's the TikTok psychics, God bless them.
Yes.
Like there's a whole new generation of people who are talking about it and really normalizing it in a way that I think is really beautiful and important, because I feel like we're getting more psychic for a couple of different reasons. Like every generation that comes in is a little more psychic than the last one.
Hmm.
And I think that we are experiencing a shift in our human consciousness as we go through this, evolution of humanity that they call the shift or they call the ascension. It's got a lot of different names, but I really believe in it. And I think we're all kind of upgrading our consciousness, and that comes with all these other psychic skills. So I feel like everyone's psychic is waking up. So many people are discovering they have that call to be a healer, and
Hmm.
that maybe they've come onto the planet right now at this time. They know they're meant to be a healer. So people are waking up to that sort of spiritual calling. It's like really a calling. And then we do all these things that open our psychic. So I used to say like yoga, Reiki, and meditation are the sort of three gateways into a larger spiritual world. So,
Yeah.
back in the day, you'd have to like climb the mountain in Tibet and bang on the temple door, and maybe they would teach you yoga, Reiki, and meditation, and maybe they wouldn't, but now it's so available. So we do these things. Thank God. I mean, I'm so grateful that that's so available.
Yeah.
And it pops open your everyone's psychic ability. So I feel like there's just this massive increase in not only the conversation we have about it, but also everyone's abilities too.
Right. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was just, as you said that, the memory or the thought about one of your students popped into my mind. It was a quite like, it was a shocking but also beautiful story. She was an elderly student who was committed to a psych ward because her gifts came on and she didn't have the
Yep.
support, and she was from
Yep.
another generation. You said that you studied to be a therapist. Was that in the mental therapist?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I studied to be a psychotherapist, and even back when I was a kid. So I was born in the 60s, growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I don't know like why I was so afraid of being put in a mental hospital, but I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I kind of knew like if you couldn't talk about it, if you saw angels and talked to Uncle Fred, you were going to end up in a mental hospital. So
Yeah.
I was always super quiet, like like I didn't share that part of my life really hardly at all. And also the kids would tease me, like you know,
Yeah.
it was it wasn't going to go well with my peers. So I didn't say much about it, but that was very common, and back in the day, and even still sometimes now when people undergo psychic experiences, if they're around people that don't know that's what it is or get really freaked out about it, they end up in um institutions, psychiatric facilities, because
Right.
you
Right.
know, people get confused about what's happening for them or scared. So sadly, it's true. I always say there's only a few letters difference between psychic and psychotic. And I think we have to be careful too, like how we open, because sometimes if we open too quickly, or I always say psychic development is not a good idea if you're struggling with your mental health.
Yeah.
To begin with, it's not a good idea to open suddenly, because it can really be destabilizing, and really sort of throw you over the edge. If you're on the edge, it can sort of throw you over the edge. So if you're a person who's struggling with your mental health, my strong advice is to work on healing yourself, stabilizing your mental health, doing some grounding, doing some energy management, like really like get yourself back on settled and situated and in a good healthy place before you open your psychic, because it's not a good idea to do if you're not in a stable place.
Right, right. And as you're sharing, I'm just so grateful that there are more of us and there's more therapists, communities, support groups for people. So I see in the background your book, Awakening Your Psychic Ability. Do you talk about that in this book?
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's like not really one size fits all, but do you have any top tips for somebody who might be questioning their experiences, and top tips around discernment, like, oh, yeah, this might be a psychic thing, or maybe not. Maybe it's something a little bit different. Like,
I think that it depends on, like, is it joyful? I mean, sometimes we can be really afraid, even when
mm-hmm.
it's natural and normal and good. We can be quite afraid of what's going on. But I think in general, a spiritual opening, a psychic opening leads us, feels good, feels productive, feels maybe exciting once we kind of work through our initial fears about it. It's moving towards life sustaining, life giving practices. And, if we are feeling bad, if you feel really bad, it may not be, it may be something that somebody else or something you need to address.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like really riddled with anxiety, depression, if the voices in your head are telling you to hurt yourself or somebody else, and making things worse, then that's something that you want to deal with as a mental health issue,
Right.
and get, treatment from a physician, from a doctor, from a mental health professional. So I think does it feel good or does it feel bad?
Right.
That's sort of the kind of level of discernment that we're um, going through it. And if you're not sure, you can ask people, you know, you might work with a healer, or I work with a lot of people that have both going on,
Mm-hmm.
and I never I never judge people or hold it against them if they're having mental health issues. It's just natural part of humanity, and I work a lot with people with mental health issues and
Yeah.
helping them sort out what's going on. I think if we have a ton of trauma, especially early childhood trauma, or we have like a history of mental health issues in our family, and then we have a strong psychic opening, it can be a really painful process. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes our psychic gifts activate at the same time that our mental health issues do, you know?
Right.
And it just can take, like, I work with a team of people, mental health professionals and spiritual healers to help a person like that who's in that situation, um, you know, get both feet on the ground, really.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like having a nice support team with people from all different backgrounds and
Yeah.
specialties. And I
Yes.
appreciate that this is coming up in the conversation, because I think if somebody said, well, I'm feeling like I'm starting to have intuitive hits come in, or I'm interested in studying Reiki, but I'm scared this might happen, just to know that there's more awareness around it right now, and also a lot of supportive options to help you discern what's happening. And myself, I've had many therapists. I think that's so important. We should always have a therapist, like, especially in our back pocket, even if we've, moved through that phase, something can come up again later on in life. And there's no shame in it at all. I think it's like, it's actually kind of bougie. It's kind of bougie to have a
I think it's kind of
therapist.
necessary. Like,
Yes.
I mean, me too. Like, I go in and out of therapy when I need it.
Hmm.
And I just think that's part of our process as healers. And I also think as Reiki practitioners and healers, we have kind of like two really strong missions. One mission is to heal ourselves, and the other is to help other people. And
Yes.
I think as healers, it's for me anyway. I'm always my first and best client. You know what I mean? Like, my clients come in with my issues du jour,
Hmm.
whatever's happening in my life. It's like a mirror reflecting to me like what I need to work on. And I'm just like, well, that's what you get when it's two sides of the same coin when you're a healer. It's your own
Hmm.
healing and it's helping other people heal. So I'm like, bring it on. Like, what's the next thing for me to do? I get a little excited about it. And, okay, let's dig around in here. There's something else I can work on. And then I find huge relief on the other side of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes, and it's so nice because sometimes I just went through this, and I'm so grateful that I dove right into, what's going on. Let me give the therapist, how do we navigate it so that then we do help, because it doesn't take long. Like, I'm talking a couple weeks later, then the clients come that have the
Yes.
same challenge, or yeah.
Isn't that interesting? There's like that resonance, that vibrational match, that whatever we're working on or whatever we just figured out, we attract clients that are in the same place, or we may be a few miles down the road, ahead of the road,
Hmm.
from where they are. But I'm like, yeah, I just figured that out last week.
Yes.
And now I can help you, right?
Yeah. I'll say, like, for myself, the big theme right now is ancestral healing. So it's going back multiple generations and having their
Yeah.
fears or their obligations, the emotional, mental energy coming through. I'm like, do I need to knock on wood? Nothing physical yet. Hopefully, we don't have that. But it's the mental, emotional, it's the conditions of the world they lived in, and those fears or thoughts come through. So that's what I've been accessing. And then also, like, my own past lives have come up where I've had something similar. And now I'm
Mhm.
seeing that in clients, and it's a combination. It's like some of my clients, it's one or the other. And a lot of them lately, it's been both. So I found that really interesting. Do you have any themes coming up right now that you noticed?
Well, yeah, for sure. And I always feel like when I look at, so my orientation as a psychic is soul reading and really looking at the point of origin of
Mm,
somebody's issue when they're coming in to me. I look, okay, well, where did this start? And I always see it's kind of a combination of something happened in your childhood or something happened in this lifetime. There's a bunch of past life themes that go with that and a bunch of ancestral themes that go with it. So I feel like there's this kind of, like, I see it like a tangled ball of yarn,
yeah.
that has some of the threads are past life threads, some are ancestral threads, and some are this lifetime threads. And I find if I can start sort of pulling on that and, like, let's untangle what happened when you're in a past life. Let's untangle what happened in your childhood. Let's see where this, lineage stuff, it's always a a
Hmm.
mashup of those three things. And when we can work on it from all of those angles, I think our clients really, really change, really transform, really heal and grow. So That's what I see. And I don't know, everybody has their themes they're working on. I think that's very unique, very individual to each of us, and also what stage of life we're in. Like, you know, the themes that I'm working on now are similar but also different from what I was doing 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's things evolve and upgrade. And I also really believe, from in my own experience, and I see this with my clients, we sort of circle it around. Like, I think, you know, we can have this idea that it's one and done, and it's really never one and done. It's like,
No.
we're going to cycle back around. And when people say things to me like, oh, I healed my relationship with my mother a long time ago. And I'm always like, oh no, no, you didn't. Like, it's just coming around, not to diminish the work somebody's already done, but just to know that our core issues, we just come back to them at a deeper level.
Mm.
I mean, I'm healing myself and my clients at a deeper level than I did when I was 20, when I was,
Yes.
40. And I just think that's sort of spiritual evolution, like the more spiritually evolved it gets a little closer to the bone. It gets even a little more painful.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't take away from all the work we've already done.
Oh,
I mean, I think when you're totally done with your work, you're off the planet. Like,
yeah, exactly.
you're not here anymore.
It's
And I'm
like,
not there. That's okay.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. It's like, all right, see you. Maybe never here again in another plane of existence. Yeah, exactly. So I love your vision of the ball of thread and all the pieces and the strings and how they connect back, because I do often follow these like threads of light in the vision. It's just recently I've been noticing personally where ancestors come into the session. And I'm so used to working with the archangels. So I'm noticing in my own practice that I'm talking like just within the last couple of months where it's like the energy's shifting a little bit. I'm like, okay. And this is good because it's all, advancement, ascension, expansion, and being open to it. And so it's interesting. I've got my eye on your book, Awakening the Psychic Ability. I'm like, I'm sure you're going to talk about some of my questions and thoughts in your books that I haven't got to yet. But it's like, if I hadn't found the answers and felt comfortable trusting myself and my team and the intuition, because it's all one step after the other, then I might not be open to talking with ancestors, because to me that flows more into mediumship work.
Right.
And I was kind of always standoffish with working with ghosts. Um, Especially, I didn't have many negative experiences, but they weren't fun. And the one was when I did do Reiki in a hospice center. That's the whole situation. I was like, I don't think I'm prepared. I probably shouldn't have done this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a little dicey. And I mean, I used to see ghosts when I was little. I called them the gray people. And they would
Mm,
sit on around my bed when I was little. And I was never really afraid of them. I've never really been afraid of spirits too much. I mean, they're just people.
yeah.
There are people that are in pain. They have trauma. Sometimes they come in their death state, which is when they look a bit corpsey, which is kind of a little freaky. But I was seeing that from the time that I was little, and I
Hmm.
knew they were just trying to tell their stories, right? So I also say I'm not a medium, but mediumship happens.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what I that's how I say, like, I'm not a medium, but mediumship happens. I do mediumship when I need to, when it needs to be done, when it's what shows up in the moment. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And sometimes that's with a client. Sometimes it's in the Airbnb that I'm in because I just want a good night's sleep. And it's Murphy's
Right.
Law. They put me in the haunted hotel room every time.
No.
So sometimes it's just what I do because I'm encountering it. And I don't know. I don't think there's a big difference between ghosts and ancestors, right? So the
Right.
ghosts are like the uneasy spirits
Yeah.
of the dead that need help crossing over. Ancestors are just like, they're here to help and they're here to cheerlead and they're really lovely and, generally speaking, well behaved. But to me, a ghost is like a client. It's nothing. They're traumatized or freaked out. They need help,
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, that's what we do. We help people. So I think the real thing that's hard to deal with is other people's trauma. That's what it really comes
Yeah.
down to. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And my training as a therapist has helped me learn how to handle other, people's trauma. I think that's the tricky part, because whether you're dead or alive, it's the trauma that's so upsetting.
Right. Right. And I love that
You
you
know?
shared all that because it had me reflecting on my experiences. My first encounter was with my grandfather who crossed, and it was good. Like I could tell it had been I was never afraid of death. It was really interesting as a child. I was very close in proximity with the crossing over of some of my great grandparents and then my grandparents. And so it never really upset me. And then I started taking classes. That's where it happened, was that the other students were saying all their scary things. And they were like saying, oh, like I have these problems with ghosts and I don't, they were just sharing all of their traumas. And so truly, that's what kind of had me being standoffish. And so then later on in life, after having all my experiences with my guides and the angels, ascended masters, and now we have more ancestors coming in, it is a completely different frequency. And I will say I have had encounters with spirits that need help with ghosts. And I don't really mind it so much, but I don't advertise mediumship just still because at the beginning I felt like I don't want to put that out there and have people come to me expecting me to help in that kind of a way. And also, I don't feel
Yeah.
qualified. Like you said, it's like sometimes there's a therapy that needs to be had in that
Hmm.
reading, and I don't feel qualified right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's some real specific skills I think you need if you're going to do mediumship. I think learning how to deal with people who are grieving,
Hmm.
So, I mean, yes, we have to talk to the spirits, but we're also, you know, need to handle and help the living person,
Yeah.
and that's like the one skill set, like how do you handle people that are grieving? And it's so hard, it's so heavy, it's so um you know it's and then dealing with the spirits is a whole different skill, right? So
Yes.
it's kind of like we have to do both. You have to get really good at both.
Yeah.
I'm really respectful of mediums. I just met Suzanne Giesman, who's one of the best mediums I think around right now, and she has an incredible training program for mediums. She teaches like evidential mediumship, which is to bring forth the evidence that the living people are looking for, to know that it's for sure their person.
Love that.
And I respect her. She's got incredible integrity, incredible skill, super compassionate, and really amazing classes. So that's where I would go if I wanted to, I would advise anyone who wants to study mediumship, because you really shouldn't just do it without training, you know.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think part of my my thing is like there's two reasons why. One of them is we need skills so we don't get into trouble. Like we don't do dangerous things ourselves as psychics.
Yeah.
um and like don't play with a Ouija board. We don't do the things you see on paranormal TV, because
Exactly.
don't learn your skills from watching horror movies.
No.
And there's a whole list of don't do things, right? And
Hmm.
then we also need to learn ethics. And
Yeah.
I talk about ethics in all of my books because I feel like that's something that really, really needs to be talked about. There's a lot of well-meaning um, people who are practicing psychic, readings that don't have very good ethics, mostly because they've never been trained. They're self-taught, so they can't
Right.
be kind of actually causing quite a lot of harm and not even really know it.
Thinking that they're helping, but then
Yeah.
causing harm. So, what I loved about the Art of Psychic Reiki book was that you talked about ethics and you talked about, consider the boundaries of when it's appropriate to pass on information and when it's not. And then you also talked about you talked about a lot. So, the discernment part of what's appropriate to pass on and when is really, really important, and if it's beneficial. And there is so much to learn here. The one thing that I took away, when you said it, I was like, yes. And it's, if you are not skilled in this, refer out. Like that's the best advice that we can have. I love, like,
Yeah.
you refer out, I love to refer out too. It's like I'm here to help you in the way that I can. And if that is
Yeah.
by giving you additional resources, I'm all about it, all for it.
Yes. Me too. We can't be good at everything. And people come to me, they're like, do you do couples therapy? And my answer is no, absolutely not. But I know some really good ones, or
Right, right.
like I think like we need to have like a really full Rolodex of other healers that we can refer our people to, whether it's, doctors, lawyers, therapists, chiropractors, we addiction specialists, trauma specialists. We can't do it
Mm-hmm.
all. So we
Yeah.
need to stick within our scope, the scope of our practice, and know where that is. And then also really be mindful about when and where to share. I always say no psychic hit and runs. If, don't share if you're not asked. It's different if you're in a session, but if you're just living your life and you're with your friends, I don't share psychic information unless I'm asked,
Yeah, that's really
you know,
valuable.
or if you really feel like you want to share, you've got to ask permission. Is it okay if I share this with you? And really respect people, you know, their yes and their no. Everyone deserves privacy and the right to opt in to that and not have unsolicited psychic information shoved on them when they didn't ask for it. That's terrible boundaries and not good for your karma.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it just reminds me of so many stories. And when I was younger too, kind of like the nosy elderly women, this is just my experience. They wanted to be in everybody's business and they would come up and just tell you like this reading. And I'm like, I don't think I asked.
Right.
I don't know that I appreciate you. I don't even know you. And it was just like so uncomfortable. I personally would
Mm-hmm.
have things like that happen in classes because a lot of my classes were in person. You're surrounded by people, and if they asked me, then I'd be more apt to even, receptive to the message.
Yes.
So that, yeah, that is really important. And one of the other practitioners you had mentioned in your book was a functional doctor. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's so important because sometimes I'll get messages regarding, what supplements to take or a diet and things like this. And I say, okay, I'm getting something around this, but do you need to go look into it deeper? Go to
Yeah.
a functional doctor, herbologist, something in that kind of a way to help because there is such a strong connection, the mind, the body, the soul, how
Mm-hmm.
all aspects of our healing really are important. And it's kind of like dominoes. One time, like sometimes you'll have something come through in the emotions and then you sense it in the body. And you even talk about knowing the different organs, what emotions they hold. I loved that you included that. That's so profound because back in the day, I had to get like 2 and 3 books just to even
Yeah.
hear about that concept. Yeah.
I know. Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life and Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro. I think are books that we all, as Reiki practitioners, should all have,
Mm-hmm.
and when I didn't know, I'd look it up. Somebody would be like, I'm having a problem with my gallbladder. And I'd be like, let's look it up. Let's see what Louise says about it. And,
Yeah.
I would just pull it out and read it and share it with them. And um, and I'm a pretty good medical intuitive, so I often get medical information from people. But even then, I'm like, check with your doctor. Like this
Yes.
is a starting point. You know, go ask your doctor to check out X, Y, and Z. Don't take it on just on what I said. It can be a
Right.
beginning point for an investigation for you. But you need to investigate.
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah.
important because what you just shared brought through for me, I'm a licensed nurse. And so I'm even more like, okay, I need to be very clear. I'm not diagnosing or prescribing anything,
Right.
right?
That's right.
So when we talk about the trainings, like your book talks about protocol and
Mhm.
guidelines, and it's a safety experience, like it's a safety net. Basically, we're watching out for
Yeah.
us and also our communities and other practitioners, along, well, it's kind of changing in my experience lately, but back in the day I feel like many of us did kind of have a bad rap. So
Mm.
when one person can really, they can do something out there, and then the word gets out like, oh, all Reiki practitioners or all psychics are this way and that. And it's not, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
we need we need to all maintain a level of high ethics and standards and know exactly what that entails. So
exactly. And professionalism, and how we not harm people, that's really what it comes down to.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's so beautiful. I love it that you said that.
Yeah, I was just
So
thinking.
true.
Right, right. So you started very in tune and you went through your whole journey. When did you tap into, I think you already told us when you started Reiki and you had many teachers, but like when did you start teaching? When did you start saying, okay, I really feel a calling to mentor and support and be there for others?
Yeah, it was it was in 1999, so 26 years ago, and I only know that because my daughter was born that year. She's 26 now. So I just have to think about how old she is, and I know how long I've been doing Reiki. But yeah, that was in 1999. I started teaching Reiki. That's when I started teaching psychic development too.
Okay.
So I was teaching like empath, energy management skills, psychic development, and Reiki. And I was teaching in person. I had a pretty big private practice.
Mhm.
And I was teaching Reiki. There wasn't too many Reiki teachers back then. So I would teach Reiki 1 month, Reiki 2 the next month, Reiki 3 the month after that. And I would do it all year long. And my classes were packed with
Oh, wow.
people learning. And then, so I don't know how many people I've taught. And then I taught in an energy medicine school for 15 years, teaching full spectrum healing. That's sort of a Barbara Brennan style uh,
Yeah.
um, energy medicine. So between the 26 years I've been teaching Reiki and the energy medicine school, I think it's thousands of people and I've done over 15,000 individual sessions in my private practice, probably more than that now, which I only know because my publisher, that was in 2018 when I wrote the book of the Art of Psychic Reiki, the publisher made me count. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of a lot. So,
Yes.
I have like a lot of clinical experience as a clinician and as a teacher. And then when the pandemic happened, I just moved everything online. So now I teach almost 100%. I teach online classes. And back in the day, I would have been like, you can't teach Reiki online and you can't do a remote attunement. And I was like, well, the pandemic happened. I was like, I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Like we're going to try it. And I think so many of us switch to like, remote practice and remote attunements and remote learning. And I find it works really, really just as well and I always like to get my hands on people when I can. And I still see clients 1 day a week in my physical in my office. But I really love the freedom that going remote, going online has
Yeah.
brought. I'm like, I'm working with somebody in New Zealand or Australia or South Africa, like that, that I never would have had an opportunity to work with, if I just kept my practice as an in-person practice.
Right. I do. I love this. My Reiki 2 class, we're going way back, right? They had us, it was in person, and they had us spread out across this house. It was a beautiful house and a partner. And then they would send remote Reiki to us. And so I
Yep.
got to sense how did I feel it? And it came in really strong. And I've
Mhm.
noticed like remote work, it's almost, in my experience, it feels more concentrated and it just
Yeah.
flows through. And I used to do what I call bubbles of light. So I would send to friends, like a bubble of Reiki. And I would say, okay, I channeled this in for like 15 minutes, but I have a feeling you're going to take an hour to absorb and integrate. And so I find that there's benefits to all of it because I also love people in person too, and I haven't done that for a while. So I love that you're doing like the hybrid and yes, the attunements remote work. If anybody's questioning how does this happen, well, have like a remote Reiki session and it's similar. You feel the
Yeah.
energy. Um, and but to that, I'm hearing you in my head, or you don't, because you did talk about sometimes people don't feel the energy as strongly, and that's
Yeah.
okay because it's still happening. And I've noticed
Yeah.
that myself too.
Yeah, I mean, some people are, especially if you're an empath, an intuitive, sensitive type person, you're going to feel the energy flowing through your body, whether you're giving Reiki or receiving it. And we might feel that as like tingling, pulsing, like waves of energy feeling. Other people don't have a natural ability to feel energy, but they're still going to feel the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're still going to feel relaxed, at peace, calm, they're going to feel the benefit of the Reiki session. And sometimes it happens over time, even when I do an in-person session or remote session, like you might feel it tomorrow or tonight while you're sleeping. You might kind of like, it can take a minute till we're relaxed and quiet.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with psychic messages. Like in all my psychic development classes, I do these like guided meditations where you tune in and you talk to a spirit guide, and um, and people will be like, I didn't get anything. And I'm like, wait 24 hours because
Mm-hmm.
chances are good that information landed in your subconscious, and it sort of bypassed your conscious mind. It'll come to you at night while you're sleeping, or it'll come to you tomorrow while you're driving or walking the dog, like an aha moment, like, ooh, like that, there it is, So we don't always have like instantaneous delivery of these, you know, uh, this kind of energy. It can have a little bit of a lag time from when we get it to when we feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important for anybody who's new and they go to have a reading or a session because sometimes what I feel is if you're too concerned or uptight about it and like you really want it right now, your system is tense. You really should be relaxed in that
Right.
receptive space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't
Yeah. We're
worry.
too stuck in the analytical mind, the thinking mind, thinking.
Yeah.
And, when I get on the Reiki table, I always start with working on people's heads. And I put my hand under their head, under the bottom of the head, on the top of their head. I'll work on their head until they stop thinking.
Love
And that can be
it.
like 10 minutes, half an hour. I don't know. Because our brains are just and we're locked in that analytical mind. We can't feel anything.
Mm-hmm. That's so
So we
true.
need to quiet the analytical mind. And I think that's why it sneaks up on us when we're in our alpha state moments. You're in the shower, you're just going to sleep or waking up, you're walking the dog, and your analytical mind relaxes for a minute. And, the other side, the right side of the brain, the intuitive side of the brain wakes up and is like able to receive and process the more subtle energies that we're getting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I just heard that, I think it was one of the last chapters where you were talking about daydreaming. And it was funny. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it made me smile. You said something along the lines of the most boring or mundane things on repeat,
Mm-hmm.
calm the mind, and then you go into that space where you can
Yes.
be open to the messages. Yeah.
That's right. That's how we get into the alpha. The alpha brainwave is when we're the most psychic, intuitive, creative. And it's that, the right side of the brain. And when we give the left side, the analytical, something to do, wash the dishes, walk the dog,
Yeah.
drive the car, like we give, fold the laundry, it puts us into sort of a light trance state, like a daydreamy state. And that shifts us into the alpha brainwave. It's a slower brainwave than the beta brainwave. The beta brainwave is just thinking, talking. We have
Mm-hmm.
to shift to this alpha, and then we're so creative. So, I always say it's the shower. People get the best psychic hits in the shower
Yeah, we
because
do.
you're really relaxed, you're really calm, you're really
Yes.
like in that alpha brainwave.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
where I first started seeing light too. Like, well, you probably heard if you haven't yourself, people will see the sparkles of light, the flashes of
yeah,
light. Yeah, it was all in the
yeah.
shower. And I was like, oh, my guides are here. And I can actually, like, my clairvoyance is popping on. Wow. So, yeah, that's amazing. I have really loved connecting today. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a final message for those who are listening, for those who would be interested in Reiki?
I would just say now is the time. Like, we need all the healers we can get on the planet right now. And Reiki is so beautiful because, we've started Reiki 1 with self-healing. And I love, 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 love the self-healing aspects of Reiki. So if you do nothing else, Learn Reiki 1 so you can do Reiki on yourself.
Mhm.
Your friends, your family, your pets, your food, your house plants,
Yeah.
can all get Reiki. So I really think, especially if you're a person who works with your hands on other people, you
Mhm.
definitely, need to learn some Reiki. And it's so easy and beautiful to do. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Absolutely. I just remembered blessing the water when you said that. And that's so
Mhm.
important. Daily practice, really easy and makes
Yep,
all the difference. Yes.
totally.
Oh, thank you so much. And where can our listeners find you?
So come to my website, lisacampion.com, and I have my all levels of psychic Reiki there, all levels of psychic development classes, lots of freebies, and just kind of all kind of information if you're looking to develop your psychic or learn Reiki or develop your intuition, that's what I do. lisacampion.com.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on to the Spirit and Soul Healing Show. And thank you to our viewers and listeners. And we'll see you guys again super soon on the next episode.